was growing up in the 70s, hitchhiking was a lot more common than it is today. The world was a lot more trusting place, and it almost seemed rude not to pick someone up if they had their thumb out on the side of the road. I remember my dad telling me about lots of wacky adventures and interesting characters he met while driving, but there was an incident that occurred shortly after I was born that made my dad stop picking up hitchhikers. I'm told that I was there at the time, but I was too young to remember it. I was in my car seat at the back of the station wagon with my two older sisters looking after me. We were on vacation, or a day trip or something. Doesn't really matter, but we were driving through the desert. My mother and father were up at the front of the car, leading my sisters in a song, but my parents went silent when they saw a man on the road. It was a hot day, and we were in a part of the desert that was pretty remote. Not a lot of traffic went through there. My parents even recalled that they didn't see a car anywhere along the road, just a man who looked to be in some amount of pain. He had long gray hair and beard, and he was wearing tattered rags. One of his more prominent features was a hunched back, and as he stood barefoot in the sand with his thumb up, my parents took pity on him and pulled over. They figured he'd probably die out there if he didn't get any help. My mom got out of the front and climbed into the back of the station wagon with us kids. She left the passenger door open and waved over to the man, who hobbled over and plopped down into the seat with a grunt. "What are you doing out here?" my dad asked cheerfully. The man just breathed heavily, looking lazily over at my father. My father's brow furrowed, and the man came to his senses somewhat. I was just running out here." The man looked and spoke as if he wanted to hide behind the air. "Close that door, it's hot out there." My father was irritated as he instructed the stranger, who seemed so unfamiliar with the etiquette of hitchhiking. Oh, right. Sorry about that." The gruff old man motioned towards the door, barely managing to close it. My sisters and mother shared stern looks with one another before my father pulled back onto the road. "So where are you headed?" my father asked the old man. Port Dowell, I think. Yeah, Port Dowell." "Port Dowell?" my father repeated. "I've never heard of that, and we're hundreds of miles away from any port." The old man whirled around with a snort to glare at my mother and sisters, who gasped in shock. "What are you doing?" My father's patience was becoming thin as the man readjusted himself. Sorry, I didn't see them there. They took me by surprise." "Well, act right, would you? I'm trying to be a good Samaritan here. And what happened to your car? You don't mean to tell me you ran into the middle of nowhere from where?" I don't remember. I think I woke up there. Yeah, I woke up there with something in my mouth. Something. My mother and father stared at each other in the rearview mirror, realizing this man was deranged. There was no way he could have survived sleeping in the desert. He ought to have been incredibly dehydrated. But on top of that, his physical deformities were unsettling. His spine looked like it had been yanked up unnaturally a foot, and the rest of his body had contorted up to try to follow it. There were strange boils and lesions on his skin that they hadn't noticed until now. Yeah, a little something in my mouth. Wait, I saved it. Let me show you. The old man began shuffling through what was left of his pockets, and when his hands emerged, they were holding a human finger. There it is. He craned what little neck he had up to look into the light, holding the finger up and examining it. It had a painted nail. It was the finger of a woman. There you go, nice little token of my gratitude. The old man gently plunked the finger into my dad's coffee, and my dad brought the car to a halt. "That's it. Get out. Get out of my car." I'm sorry. "No, get out of my car." My dad shoved the old man's massive shoulder into the door. Please, I have to get to town," the old man begged. "All right, I can see we're going to have to do this the hard way." My dad got out of the car and started walking around towards the passenger side. The old man scrambled, snorting towards the back seat, trying to get deeper into the station wagon before my dad could pull him out. My mom screamed and kicked the man in the face with her high heel, preventing him from proceeding any further towards us kids. No, please. Please don't. He grunted as my dad had the door open and was pulling him out by the armpits. You don't understand. Get out of here, you freak. My father had a look of alarm and disgust on his face as he threw the crippled man to the side of the road and watched him roll into the gutter before jogging back over to the driver's seat and pulling away. The most deranged cries erupted from the gutter as we drove away. It was dusk. My sisters were in tears, and my mother remained in the back seat, stroking their heads as they cried. And as the moon rose higher and higher in the sky, we emerged from the desert into a forested area. The girls had calmed down at this point, and there had been an hour of pure silence in the cabin of the station wagon. Both my parents still felt very much on edge, although they wouldn't show it in front of us. What happened next defied belief. My father's described this scene to me many times. Driving down that silent road, tall trees on either side of it. Hadn't seen a car all day, and now the moon was rising, full. My father flicked the high beams on, but it was still difficult to see anything in the encompassing dark. Then, out of nowhere, a large animal lay on the road before us. My father swerved and slammed on the brakes as it looked large enough to do serious damage to the car. It had no fur and pale skin. It looked deformed. It was the man. The very man my father kicked out of the car 3 hours earlier was now somehow in front of us on the same road. He glared up at the car, his mouth hanging open, drooling and distended unnaturally. His eyes were gone from their sockets, but somehow he knew where to point those voids in the direction of my father. He was completely naked now, on all fours, and he snarled up at our car a few feet away. Why didn't you listen to me? You didn't help me. I'm gonna eat you now. I'm gonna eat you now. I'm gonna start with those tasty fingers. Dark fur began growing out of the man's back and out of his face. He screamed and howled and laughed as his mouth and nose formed a long snout with sharp teeth. His fingers split away from each other, folding unnaturally over his palms, and claws appeared on his new paws where his knuckles had broken. My father hit the gas and rammed the car straight into the man. The body of the Lycan flew a few feet, but it was clearly not nearly enough to kill him. Its spine corrected, and it stood on its hind legs at 8 feet tall. My father hit the gas again and attempted to swerve around it as one swipe of its massive claw took off our roof. He literally continued to floor it as the creature chased behind the car, and as we finally neared the next town, police lights and sirens went on up ahead. My dad was too terrified to even take a mental note of where the creature was, but it wasn't behind the car anymore. The sirens must have scared it off into the woods. My father spent a couple nights in jail and lost his license for speeding, but we were all just glad to have made it alive and relatively unharmed. But that's not the end to the story. About a year later, back in our hometown, my father hit something with the lawnmower while cutting tall grass. It was a pile of about 25 human fingers, some from men, some from women. They seemed to be ring fingers specifically. My parents contacted the police, but they never found out how they got there. My parents are sure it was the Lycan. They don't know how he found out where we lived, but they fear the day when he returns. Hey guys, thanks for listening to that story. I didn't edit any of my own crazy vocals in that one, and I feel kind of proud of them. I didn't know I could growl like that, actually. I kind of want to practice, although my throat feels kind of destroyed. Tune in next Thursday for a brand new original creepypasta, which will probably be The Knucklavy, and tune in on Sunday night for Nightmare Theater, an open book club for nightmares. Until next time, embrace the beautiful dark.